So I thought most of the day, I thought that I wasn't gonna, come on tonight, that I couldn't, because I would be shaking. And like last night, I became too clear that I was not talking, was causing shakes really bad, even when I was reading. And then it's causes pain, and then there's residual pain. I took some Benadryl tonight before the show, hoping it'll drowsy me so I could do with the show, not be as able to hurt. But and I thought about, let's start here. I am very depressed. You know this. Um, I burned my finger tonight. I don't mean to, but I deliberately burned my finger tonight. Like I was trying to do my bangs, and I stuck it into it's like a curling iron, but with prongs. What do you call them? Things that stick out of a brush, so that it would burn. Um, at one point today, I became so overwhelmed with sadness, I began hitting my own leg repeatedly in my upper thigh. Um, just punching it. Um, so you have to work from that framework yesterday and everything. So the night before last night, I was thinking about, my goals for this year. Maybe I saw some videos or some titles or something that was sort of like checking in January with my New Year's resolution, or how it's going. And I thought to myself, like, oh yeah, this is going to be like really bad. Um, but sorry, like, the brain being so. I didn't make a coffee. Hmm. So I thought about last year. I thought about how I did the best that I could last year. Like I couldn't say to myself, last year you got to give it to yourself. You did as best you could. You worked as hard as you could. Okay, but last year was just like so horrible. Um, um, and then it started to go darker. Like, um, well, then what does that mean about this year? Then, like, why would you think if you worked as hard as you could this year that it would be any better? If anything, due to how hard you've been working for so long, you could expect to be getting weaker. You could expect the toll to show more, and the returns, however little they've been, to be in fact diminishing. So that's a really dark thought. And then I thought about my life, how, it's like life is like a game for a lot of people. Not if you're like born rich, trust funds, but it's not like for that, but if you're born at least like poor, you're like you have to kind of you have to game things out because it's puzzles. It's it's trying to learn the rules and how um so yeah, it's trying to learn the rules of the game and how you can get ahead. And okay, but there are some games that are more chance than others. And there are some that it's like I feel for myself that so much is not only out of my control, but the biggest things, like the very worst things that have happened were entirely out of my control. And I think that that's what led to the next day, me wanting to be asleep all day. My mind sort of corrects it to, well, then the only way to survive that is to sleep so that you are stronger for when the horrible thing happens. Because you don't want to be too tired to deal with this horrible thing outside of your control that's now happening to you. And so I wake up yesterday, but I still was in that sort of very dark frame of mind. I still wanted to do the show, but my psyche was still very low as it is today. I think about like the lately you've seen how would you I'm incredibly suicidal, and I'm suicidal in ways that are um terrifyingly simple. Very logical is the word I go back to. Everything answers out in the puzzle to the logical answer of like, if you're in a game and you cannot win, and the only thing is suffering, then the only thing to do is to exit the game. If it's just a game of suffering, like you're gonna, you're just gonna like twist and twist your arm, and there's no way out until you're out. Would you like to get out? Well, that seems logical, doesn't it? It's like the sitting alone in my thoughts trying to figure out my depression leading back there so easily and so matter of factly. Like even the punching, the burning, the sort of recognizing in my brain, the body being so temporary in a way of like, it doesn't matter. Like in a way that I haven't been this used to ever. I've been sad, but I haven't been so like assuredly logically sad. Like where I took the time to go like I have this app. Um a better place. I have oh god. Okay, so I have to say in one word, like why I'm here right now, it's Jerry. Um, because Jerry was like hurt last night that I stopped. And Logic tells me I like can't control for everything. I can't control for the big horrible things. So the ways that I could have control, I should have done them right. So logic tells me that Shane I never should have spoken to, and I never should have put any time into getting to know him or feeling happy to see him in chat. Logic tells me that I failed in integrating a person that was only going to leave. And I can take that name and I can carry that into plenty. And that's where I failed. Because I should have assumed that outcome and that therefore it was always my choice to be kind and to be accepting. And I shouldn't have done that. Um, but like with Jerry, he was hurt yesterday that I stopped. And that's real. And what I have the control over, however tearful and sad and not well I am, if I can be here and it means it's something to someone, to him, then I take that little control and try to, it's such a small power, but it's the one that I have in this moment. And whatever that does for the people that it means something to, I'm here. But I'm at a point, like, in my life where I am I'm afraid that I'm no longer chasing answers, um, but it's sort of question. Stella, would millions of men be willing to hurt you? Answer, yes, assuredly. Strangers? Yes, assuredly they would. This isn't it crazy? Um, I think that in order for there to be acceptance of a lot of these things done to me, and sometimes, oddly, the intricacies of it get to me, not even just the wide scale of it all, but sometimes it's like, I am a hated person. Okay, yeah, I'm a hated person. We don't there are things we don't have control, okay, we don't or even and what's been done with that, um, the intricacies of how people have chosen to pick me apart. Um, I'm afraid like my mind wasn't strong enough for that. And I'm not seeking answers on how to heal from it because I don't believe it exists. How to erase it from your mind, I don't believe it exists. how to make pretend that it's not real. Any of these things that I think a person in a state of looking for healing, that's where they would be at. They would be at a place of, well, unpack this. How do we fix what's gone terribly wrong in your head? Um, and I'm no longer there. Just realize that. And when you're stuck in that long enough, it just like plays horrible things in your mind. Like, well, then how do you get out of this game? Because you're not winning it. And how much do you feel you can take? Um, so yesterday that's where I was at and I couldn't really explain. And today I'm I found a little bit of light in my people that have stayed by me. And I take that because that's real. The ones I thought were real, many of them weren't, but the ones I thought that there are and that they are, I take that, and is that little, what would you say, Jerry? The little, what is what does Vision use for his power? um, that's all the light I can see today. Um, change the rules. And brave people like me doesn't really work like that. If I could, the rules would say, doesn't matter thinking that way. So, like, I didn't choose to be born poor. I didn't choose to be born when my mom was abused, like, while I was inside of her. I didn't choose to have that never meet my father. I didn't choose to be raped. I didn't choose to be robbed. I didn't choose to lose my mom. I can't change I can't change those rules. One thing, I have a problem with trying to mine the past for lessons, not always answers, but lessons or some value from that. And I don't believe it really serves me overall. I mean, we right now, we live in the past. Like everything about this room, this walrus, the your room wherever you are, the globe we're in is the past in the sense of without it, we're not here. So living in the past is kind of like living right now. Like, if you were to get rid of everything that is an effect of the past, you're getting rid of everything. So the mind, of course, would hold to that. It's just sometimes I wonder if, like, and I don't believe I would. Like, there's magnetic things that you can do with your brain. There's like lobotomization. There's kind of seemingly archaic things that can be done to alter the brain, the memory, who you are, like fundamentally. Like I believe lithium is like that because it's a hard metal that it affects who you are. And some people are so unhappy with who they are that they would like to change who they are. I actually I don't know who I am. A caveat. I was gonna say I don't know who I am except for how this person I do. And if you ever look at and I'm uploading some of them, my early outfit of the days where I talk, and those were during an era of Abilify, which I believe altered who I was drastically. And you can look into that. And it wasn't a good experience at all. It was very, and I feel like you could see in my eyes, like drugged, like um that was put under that by an insane psychiatrist who should lose her license. But either way, outside of that, I guess what I'm saying is it's almost like I want to keep the parts of me that I can't believe, like my haters, that I am all bad. That we have to erase all of this and put in this new, you know, find the pill, the whatever you've created, put this in this new person. Like, and that person can go on because they're the good one, they're the fixed one, they're a different one. But I almost don't know any other way except that hoping that by doing that, there's some piece of me that remains that's me. Because the me that's me right now is really struggling. And I am confused. Like what to think, what to do sometimes, who to trust, who cares about me, who was lying, and who's so because I know somewhere on my page some people were stealing and maybe still are, and they're there to hurt me, and who are they? Anyway, I'm at an age of enough time being behind me that I can analyze enough to say when people tell you things get so much better and what time heals and what time does and how much time to give things and this sort of I'm I've lived enough time to see that that's not born true and it's not even going in that direction. Which is scary, but also it makes me very despising of fake bullshit psychology that the therapy stuff that's put out there, that's slogans, that's not really gonna work on everyone, and that's not really true. That's maybe sounds good in a quote, but it's like it gets me upset, like this program that I'm in, that you look at the faces and which expression, it's like, "This is a scam to take my $50." This is not gonna cure anybody's depression. You can spit out one testimonial of someone saying it helped them, I don't care, I don't believe it. People enjoy taking. Wow. Okay, Darth, what you just said, but you can take that and you can accept that in your head and say, okay, this is a reality. I take this, I insert that in my brain, like a, like what am I doing? Like a cassette, like an old, plug that in there. And you can somehow go on with life and okay, I can take that and put that in there and it gets dark. It's like, holy shit, that's scary. Like you're essentially saying, "Oh, there's people out there looking to tear you down. Their objective is to hurt you." Like then essentially also the last part of that is that by me expressing my hurt makes me a more desirable victim of more hurt. Like I'm struggling to see the brightness in life that I once did before I was forced to see so much dark. Just- And I'm struggling for hope. I'm struggling for control over to take a hope and and build something around me that's real. Like brick by brick, I could take one, I could craft one, and I can put myself in a wall, and that I can do. But I'm like understanding I can't. This is not real. And what control you think you have is not there. And where do you circus? Ah, ah, I don't know what ah, sorry, the ah word. It must be nice to be born with a wall, be born with protectors, be born with help. And those are not the rules of my game. And I didn't check out today, so that's good. But um I'm scared about how close I am. I'm scared about I think maybe they assigned me a person with the I'm sorry, I heard a noise and now I'm ha 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 trigger triggered ha. My tail's gone. Every word I've ever wrote him, anything with him, I deeply, deeply, deeply regret. That was a waste of every thought, emotion. I should never have done that. Feel shame for that because of him being gone. Same with Edward. And this happens to me, and I have to process it. And maybe it all right now feels like an overwhelming amount between the end of last year and now, that maybe the weight of all of this will get lighter and not feel so clear and logical, and it's only just an equation equaling a result. Um, this is where I am at right now. So I'm sorry that I'm not stronger than this. Um, and I'm sorry that I'm sorry if the toll ever shows, because I try for it not to. This bone, my hose, this is my armor. Because I never really want to show the toll that the damage makes, but well, a new superfood. Thank you. Christopher Christian. Old mental Wally. I have the first reading I ever did. What do you want me to post it later? All my videos, by the way, are like unmonetized. Like if this one is right now, by the end of the stream or a few minutes after it will be. I don't know why, but I never asked them to review it because even like my outfit of the day is because on my last channel, every time I did it, they just removed the videos or something. So, um, but anyway, the reason is when I first wanted to read that night years ago, I thought, um, maybe it would be a distraction for all of us of the problems in the world, in our life, and that if I could be a help, um, and also I secretly really could use the companionship, um, that if I could be a help, if I could feel I have some value, um, that it feels something for me. Um, so with that said, I would like to read to you. I know we left off at a point yesterday, did not finish a chapter. Sorry about that. Um, but we will tonight. Did you see yesterday I lit those candles because I didn't move them from date night. I moved them. Some of them burnt out. I took one and took a bath. And then I did watch a couple episodes of Night Agent. It's so good. It's so good. I don't know what episode any of you are on. I think I was on like 4. Pulling you guys up. You can look at the title actually here, and it tells me where we left off. Um, okay, so what's difficult about this book, there's a lot of different characters so far, and even we've only just started, we're only on chapter 3, but in this small town, you kind of get to know like everybody. So, I his mother, I believe they're talking about telling her to eat something 'cause she's looking like a string bean. And she says, if it's sweet she wants, it's sweet she'll get. Being declared, I'll put the word out and also whip her up. And then here we get our title, something extra special too. Maybe one of their magic cakes. Uh, I tucked my hands under my arms to warm them, thinking that as far as comparisons went, a string bean was a good choice. They didn't need much to absolutely thrive. Some sun, some water. This time of year, a lot of us don't get enough sun. Like even myself living in the desert, I noticed like the other day it was nice out and like the dogs wanting to be out and get some sun. So even if you could just in the car get some sunlight through, it helps with that seasonal depression that I think we all could get. I mean, obviously if you're in like Australia, somewhere where it's summer right now, it'll be easier. But anyway, we could all use some sunlight. Um Mostly what they needed was support, something to hang on to, or in Ernie's case, a whole community who loved her and would help hold her up until she had the strength to stand on her own once again. She'd love that. Ty motioned toward the building with his chin. Are you ready to head inside? I can't say it's any warmer, but at least it's dry. The heat's still out. Aunt Bean swept an arm toward Tessa Jane and me, as though trying to corral us. She used to do the same when we were little, pulling us both to her, anchoring us against her soft curves. They had always made me feel safe, loved. I took a few steps forward and Tessa Jane flinched, seeming alarmed by my nearness. At her reaction, I was suddenly flooded with so much shame and regret that it hurt to breathe deeply. The issue was traced to the electrical panel, Ty said. Should be fixed by the end of the day. Who's doing the fixing? Aren't all the grays up in Mentone? Aunt Bean asked as we headed for the porch. The mention of the Gray family made my chest ache even more. My heart pounded, my palms dampened. What made me think I could do this? Be here in starlight with Tessa Jane and the Grays, and even dare Buckley fight? Have mercy on my soul. I wanted to go back to Birmingham, where life was so much easier, where I didn't have to deal with all these emotions, all this pain, out of sight, out of mind. As anxiety thrummed, I took even breaths, ignoring the heartache, trying my best to pretend it wasn't there. Guys, look how together my head is. I don't know if I can show you. Do you see this? Jerry, get the zoom. Do you see this here? This is inside out. Like, do you see how the stitching, the the stitch, this would have been in the interior. So I put the same ones on from like yesterday, I think, or the day before, but they're inside out. Yeah. Where's your head at? As anxiety thrummed, I took even breaths, ignoring the heartache, trying my best to pretend it wasn't there. Like always, I inhaled for 5 seconds, held the breath for 5 seconds, then released it for 5 seconds. Box breathing was a technique my therapist had taught me years ago when my worries fell out of control. And I prayed it worked now because I felt like I was about to break open. I tried to assure myself that around Alvin Gray, who owned Starlight Electrical, I'd be able to hide the secret I kept behind small talk. It was his son, Sawyer, I had to worry most about. Honestly, it was nothing short of a miracle that I hadn't had to face him during my brief visits over the years. Aunt Bean glanced between Tessa Jane and me. A few days ago, Annabelle's baby decided to come a month early, a little girl. The Grays drove straight up to lend a hand. The last time I'd seen Sawyer's younger sister, Annabelle, she'd been a sophomore in high school. It was hard to believe she had a family of her own now. Once again, I felt like an outsider. I should have been at her wedding, at her baby shower. I've been close to the family once because I've been close to Sawyer. Memories flooded as I recalled all the time Sawyer and I had spent together way back when. In my mind, it was so easy to see his kind hazel eyes, his shy smile, to feel his strong hands, to smell his piney scent. It was heartbreakingly easy to recall the hopes I'd had and how the starlight had ruined everything. I reached into my coat and pulled out my star pendant. I closed my hand over it in the hope that it would help ground me, comfort me. Ty glanced upward at the man on the scaffolding. Sawyer came back early to take care of an emergency call that came in yesterday. He probably would have had the work here done by now, except I wrangled him into helping me with the tart. He'll be down in a second once he pries the rest of it free. There was a stabbing pain in my chest, like my heart was breaking all over again, shattering. Panic set in, rooting deeply, like it was never planning to let go, because Sawyer was here. Chapter 4. Is there a thing like I don't know? I assume most of you guys grew up in small towns because isn't most of the world made up of small towns? Or then again, if you look at population wise, maybe most people are in cities. I'm not sure. But isn't it normal, like in a small town, for people to go back to someone that they had an early like relationship with or crush with? Because I feel like, and also when you think about it, the world was smaller years ago. So if you're going back to something from years earlier, you are going back to a smaller time. Okay, so but what I mean, Terry, is like, do you think that if you had a crush on a girl, like when you were in like the sixth grade or something, or she had a crush on you, a girl, like that would hold more um later than they necessarily would being like a similar person, but like, how do I say it? Like, say that they're like some stats, like, say that they're like, um, blonde hair, 36, 5'6". You know what I mean? Like, just give me, but this one person is the one that you had a crush on in the sixth grade, and the other one isn't. Like, they seem similar on the outside by certain points, but the other one has a lot more sway because, like, the era and the place setting that it was in. So, like, in other words, these are like modern. Oh, thank you, Darth. Indo Wars, congratulations! Woo woo. In other words, like, um, this guy Sawyer, just to recap this chapter a little, she's clearly alluding that they used to have like a thing. And I'm thinking, girl, this is like the modern era, but everything in a small town is like the who's who. It's such a smaller pond, so to speak. It's like maybe outside of here, it's like Sawyer who, but because there used to be something, this person is like very powerful in her head. Same, I believe, with Tessa Jane, or is it Addie and Ty? Let's see. Anyway, chapter 4, from the kitchen of Verbena Fulbright. No, because I didn't get to grow up in a small town because I had to move around so much. So I'm just so intrigued by the idea. Like, what if there was a guy out there that was a boy that ever had any thought toward me as a child? Like, it almost seems to have some type of value, like knowing that some little girl still thinks of you, or like, I don't know, I guess I'll never really get to have that. Like, it would really surprise me if it existed. But then again, like, they would know my name and they would know how to find me, and so it doesn't exist, but maybe there's something to it. That's I mean, look at all the people that reconnected on like Facebook like 50 years later, you know? From the kitchen of her beat up full bread. Always take the extra effort to break your eggs into a separate bowl before adding them to your cake batter. You never want one bad egg to ruin something you've worked hard to create. Break your eggs in a separate bowl. I don't know that I've ever had a bad egg in my life. A lucky guy. No, I don't think anybody thinks anything of me from any time growing up. Nobody got to know me either. I mean, what is popularity? What makes you like someone when you're growing up? I didn't have any of that going for me. So, okay, Addie. Aunt Bean must have felt my panic because she put a soothing hand on my arm and said, "Didn't I ever tell you, Sawyer?" Oh, okay. So chapter 3 was Addie too. No wonder I was like, oh, was that Tessa Jane? No. So they're doubling. They're Addie and Addie. Okay. So Tessa Jane with Ty, but Addie with Sawyer. Okay. Didn't I ever tell you Sawyer works part time for his daddy? No, she certainly had not. Probably because at any time his name had come up in the last 12 years, I excused myself from the conversation. She knew I didn't want to talk about Sawyer. She just didn't know why. Not the full extent of it anyway. She simply assumed, like the rest of town, that he'd broken my heart by choosing Ree over me, and he had. But there was more to it than that. Since when? I managed to say. She shrugged innocently. Since Luna started school. Luna was in sixth grade now. So what, 5 years ago? Six? It was just one more thing I hadn't known because I'd moved away. Squeezing my pendant so tightly my knuckles hurt, I glanced upward, but the scaffolding shielded him from view. It had been so long since I'd seen him in person. I wanted to get closer. I wanted to run. I took deep breaths and tried to think of everything other than Ree's secret. Silently, I started listing as many colors as I could see: the terracotta puddles in the parking lot, the umber wood tone of the porch boards, the streaks of green in the stones stacked on the shop's exterior. Tessa Jane turned my way, as if sensing my distress. Her pale brows were drawn low, and worry floated in her eyes. After a moment, she looked the other way, but then abruptly said, "Best we get out of this weather, don't y'all think? We can catch up with Sawyer inside." Not waiting for anyone to answer, she stepped forward to open the door. At the same time, Ty reached for the handle. Their hands bumped. They both froze. Then Tessa Jane quickly took a step back and jammed her fists into the deep pockets of her coat. Ty yanked open the door. Through clenched teeth, he said, "Ladies first." Aunt Bean's eyebrows were pulled low in concentration as she strode past them, rain droplets sliding off her plastic hood and down her raincoat. Tessa Jane followed, her back ramrod straight. I hesitated, and the starlings trilled. I wasn't sure if they were encouraging me to go inside or urging me to make a run for it. Aunt Bean gave me a tender smile, and there was an understanding glint in her eyes as she said, "Addie?" Pulled forward by her gentleness, I reluctantly stepped into the bakery. Once through the door, I was immediately wrapped in a vanilla scent I'd recognize anywhere. It came from Aunt Bean's special extract recipe. My anxiety all but vanished as the air went eerily still. I glanced around in astonishment. There was nothing left to hint that this space used to be a laundromat. The cement floors had been covered in reclaimed heart pine boards. Cinder block walls had been sheetrocked and painted a deep blue, subtly flecked with gold. Raised panels about shoulder high were topped with a rustic wooden shelf. Worn butcher block countertops gleamed. Light danced along brass trimmed menu boards. Display cases sparkled, and I could easily see Bean's cake sitting in them. Like her gimme some sugar cake, a moist brown sugar, cinnamon, and toasted pecan cake filled and topped with cinnamon frosting, or her strawberry stardust cake, which had 3 layers of strawberry cake, strawberry and cream filling, and was covered in delightful buttercream made with strawberry puree. I picked myself up at the grocery today a slice of um I don't know about your grocery, but my Ralph's, they do slices of um the the Cheesecake Factory cheesecakes. And it was 7.50, but it was marked down to 2.25. And anyway, I felt I needed it in my stomach because I feel like I'm getting ulcers. Like something is like eating a hole in my stomach or something. Like I don't know the stress. But anyway, that helped. But 7.50 for a slice of cake, and not even like thick. It's like pretty thin, and most of it, the Cinnabon one is not mostly even cheesecake. It's half like cinnamon cake and half cheesecake. Anyway, so I would have gone for a strawberry stardust cake, but they didn't have any. From a wooden beam that ran along the vaulted ceiling. Do you see those like Valentine's cakes? Those would be good for like a school party. Maybe I don't know if they do like office parties, but those were cute looking. Uh, the way that they're describing this room, it's like I feel like it has a real appeal. Aw, thank you, Jerry. Thank you. I feel like it has a real it would be like for Jerry to describe like a room for like writing comics. Like a wall where you could like pin your storyboards and all the special pens and different like desktop screens, your ideas and inspiration and like, because it's like who cares about all your menu boards, display case cards, like if you're really into like bakery shops, I guess this would be like bakery shop porn for you or something. A Valentine's office party is right for the cause of divorce. What? I didn't mean a party, I guess, is like for an office you just bring in and be like, "Oh, I thought if anyone wants any, I picked these up just to be nice." Oh, thank you, Jerry. It like in Severance when he had like a display of melons, a melon party or something. Yeah, I wasn't thinking that way. I was just like, it would make my freaking day in school if somebody brought cupcakes and I get one. Oh my god, that would have been a good day. Okay. From a wooden beam that ran along the vaulted ceiling from an iridescent glass starling that held a string of three large silvery glass stars, each piece unique, puffed with enchantment. The room was cozy and inviting, whimsical and charming. It felt like a hug. It felt like love. It was on being pure and simple, and maybe I realized that had been the intention of the renovation all along. Tears stung my eyes as I watched her studying the glasswork, light reflected off the pieces, making them seem like they were somehow moving. It's my favorite thing about the whole renovation, she said, noticing me looking at her. Ernie Plum outdid herself. Tessa Jane had tears in her eyes as well. It's beyond perfect. Down the hall came the sound of a power saw and voices without tables and chairs in the space, and sounds echoed, bouncing around. Smiling, Bean waited for the noise to die down before adding, Ernie knew exactly what it was I wanted and made it happen. So Ernie is Ty's mother. Ty wore a sad yet pleased smile as he too gazed upward. She's right proud of them. She should be, Tessa Jane said. That's such a southern thing. She's right proud of them. You know what I thought was a southern saying, but that I've been hearing a lot more lately is this what does it mean to say in the paint? Like something in the paint? Do you know what I mean? Mm. Mm. That is not something I would hear said where I grew up. Basketball reference. Really? Hmm, interesting. Yeah. She is right proud of them. She should be, Tessa Jane said. His smile vanished. A vein bulged in his neck. He raked a hand through shaggy brown hair. Well, pushing it off his face. The man knew how to hold a grudge, that was for sure. And honestly, my heart hurt for him because I understood that his anger was rooted in years of pain. The endless ache that came with loss was one I knew well. You should pay Ernie a visit, Aunt Bean said to Tessa Jane. Tell her yourself. I know she'd love to see you both. She's always had a soft spot for the two of you. Ty glared for a second at Tessa Jane before looking away again. and then I heard a quiet snort. I took a step forward, aiming to place myself between her and him to block the bitterness. But Tessa Jane was already on the move. Oh, so sorry, she said when she stepped on his foot on her way to take a closer look at the bakery case. Accidentally on purpose, I guessed. He smiled tightly. Steel-toed boots. Didn't feel a thing. Pity, I heard her whisper as she passed by me. My eyes widened. Where had this sassy side of her come from? Aunt Bean suddenly banged her walking stick against the floor 2 times and narrowed her gaze at Ty. What's got your britches in a wad this morning? Tyler Underwood? Do I need to get your mama on the phone? Tessa Jane and I gasped. It didn't matter how old you were. Threatening to call someone's mama was the ultimate reprimand. Ty's cheeks burned red, but he didn't say anything in response. I'm guessing you're a mite tired, Bean suggested. What with taking care of all those animals at your place and looking after your mama. Addie, would you mind rustling us up the painted area from the foul line to the basket? Oh, yeah, isn't that hard in the paint? Yeah, isn't that the same? Mm. Rustling us up some coffee. There should be a pot in the kitchen. I'm sure most I'm sure some caffeine will straighten Ty right out. Ain't so Ty. Most people around here would have simply ignored his mood or pulled him aside and told him to quit being ugly. But Aunt Bean wasn't most people. She'd effectively let him know that she'd circle the wagons around Tessa Jane. But uh, but Aunt Bean wasn't most people. She'd effectively um around Tessa Jane, but cared enough about him to give him a second chance to shape up. If he had a lick of sense, he'd agree, even if he didn't even like coffee. Yes, ma'am, he mumbled. Coffee would be great, thank you. I started for the kitchen and Tessa Jane fell in step with me. I'll help. We walked around the display cases toward the double swinging doors that led into the kitchen. Behind us, Aunt Bean started talking about the renovation work happening today, as if nothing major had just happened. Once the doors closed behind Tessa Jane and me, we looked at each other, eyes wide in surprise. After a moment, I said, he deserved it for being so unkind to you. I've never seen him like that. Well, it's nothing new to me. I thought again about a small boy whose father had been taken away, but knew that if there was ever a time to circle my wagons too, this was it. When we go back out there, I can kick him in the shin if you want. Her eyes lit, then she shook her head. Probably best to just let it go. She then glanced around. Whoa, look at this place. What was right? High rectangular windows and overhead fixtures flooded the space with light. There were 4 long work tables, deep sinks, many racks, shelving galore, a giant dishwasher, bakery depth ovens, a range top, and 2 industrial region refrigerators. Large ocean blue hexagon tiles with a worn rustic finish covered the floor. The walls had been painted a warm orange tones, and the stainless steel counters reflected it, making it look like the color of a sunrise. If the front of the bakery represented nighttime, the kitchen was daybreak. It was a bright room, happy. I could easily picture the sugar birds in here twittering away while creating magic. Yeah, how much did that renovation cost? I feel like that'd be like $1 million. I knew. Well, Tessa Jane walked into the middle of the room and spun in a slow circle, taking everything in. The culinary school I went to had a less impressive kitchen. I knew she had to be exaggerating, but I got the gist. Aunt Bean had clearly spared no expense. Told ya, money. She said Aunt Bean talked about expanding the business. Not to me. Why? It's excessive, is all. The whole renovation had been a bit excessive, in my opinion, but I loved seeing Aunt Bean reflected in the space. Even in the commercial kitchen, her love of color shined through. You know, Aunt Bean, if she's in, she's all in. It felt so strange to be talking with Tessa Jane. Strange and not wholly comfortable, if I was being honest. I sidestepped to a counter near the swinging doors where the coffee maker sat, its pot full. Stacks of paper cups sat it, along with lids, sleeves, stir sticks, pods of half and half, and sugar packets. I filled 4 cups nearly to the top and glanced over my shoulder at Tessa Jane. She was running her palm back and forth across a work table, a thoughtful look on her face. Because of the growing silence, I forced myself to say something. Did the renovations inspire you to bake a cake? After all, she was a pastry chef. This kitchen had to look like a dream come true to her. I think I'll leave the cake making to the birds, she said tightly. Before I could dissect her response, I heard Aunt Bean greet Sawyer with a loud, hearty hello. He'd finally come inside. My hand stilled, mid stir of the sugar I'd added to my coffee. Tessa Jane stepped up next to me. She added hazelnut half and half to one of the cups I'd filled, and her voice held a note of apprehension as she said, "Do you not want to see Sawyer? You two were close once, weren't you?" Because she was trying to make conversation, even though she was clearly not comfortable either. Part of me wanted to tell her what had happened between Sawyer and me, to share something of myself with her, to see if I could open up just the tiniest bit, and also to get it out of my chest, out of my heart. But I couldn't. Once was a long time ago. I set the stir stick aside and put a lid on my cup. Have you seen him at all since you moved away? I shook my head. The power saw word again, then quieted. How do you think Ty likes his coffee? I asked, needing to change the subject. With a little salt? Then she gave a small shake of her head. I meant sugar. I smiled as I pictured an angel sitting on one of her shoulders and a devil on the other. I dumped 4 packets of sugar into his cup. The more sweetness he can get, the better. She handed me another packet, one to grow on. Good thinking. I poured it in. She said, I know why he acts the way he does. I do. But I wish he'd realized that what happened wasn't my fault. I swallowed hard, knowing, feeling that I'd hurt her much the same way he had. Before I could talk myself out of it, I said, sometimes it's easier to hide from the truth instead of facing the pain that comes with it. Our gazes met. This was the longest conversation we'd ever had. My skin prickled. My heart rate skyrocketed. I finally had to look away because I felt stripped bare in that moment, completely exposed, which was why I nearly jumped out of my skin when the door swung open. Aunt Bean just filled the doorway as she stared at us, an eyebrow raised. Just checking in to see if you two had gotten lost back here. Tessa Jane snapped the lid on the cup. We've been admiring the renovation. It's something, isn't it? Now finish up and come on out and say hello to Sawyer. Yes, ma'am, she answered, and we answered in unison. The door swung shut behind her, and we quickly finished making the coffee in silence. Tessa Jane picked up two cups, placed a shoulder against the door, and pushed it open, but only an inch or so. She looked directly at me. If you want to sneak out the back, I'll cover for you. Her eyes, compassion swam in a sea of blue. Sudden emotion twisted my heart, wringing it out. Her offer might have been the kindest one I'd ever been given. And it was tempting, so tempting. Thanks, I finally said, picking up two cups. But I should probably get it over with. Seeing him, I mean. And it might be easier with people around. Girls, Aunt Bean said. I swanny. Coming. Tessa Jane took another step, fully opening the door, holding it open for me. Pulling my shoulders back, I stepped forward. It's cold now. Mm. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Ooh, and in the okay. Hard in the paint meaning. You're right, originating in basketball. Expression for giving one's full effort. Well, then I go hard in the paint for you guys every night. In the paint. See, I thought that was a Southern saying. The last time I'd seen Sawyer had been a sunny summer day a lifetime ago in a cemetery not too far from here. I'd left town the very next day. I tried to avoid looking at him now, but I couldn't tear my gaze away. He'd always been a big guy, the kind that should play football, but he'd never been interested in the sport. Shy and quiet, he preferred books and music and long walks in the woods. He was a gentle kind of giant. Old wounds ripped open as I studied his face. Because he's probably the one that her friend that died, what was her name? Ree? Has the secret about. So she knows a secret about Sawyer. Oh, thank you, Rob. AIDS. What is AIDS? What is AIDS? He'd always been a big guy, the kind that should play football, but he'd never been interested in the sport. Shy and quiet, he preferred books and music and long walks in the woods. He was a gentle kind of giant. Old wounds ripped open as I studied his face, which had hardened a bit with age. Copper shot through the stubble, covered covering his cheeks, his jaw. Long russet eyelashes framed his hazel eyes, a beautiful mix of pale green with a touch of gold and brown. Freckles dotted his nose, his cheeks, his broad shoulders sagged a bit, as if he carried the weight of the world, and his soulful eyes reflected it. He'd always felt things deeply, as if life itself depended on him, seemed that hadn't changed. Hi, Sawyer, Tessa Jane said as she handed Bean a cup. Good to see you again. I couldn't speak, so I only nodded, hoping it conveyed that I was glad too. Though I wasn't. I'd been dreading this day for years. I stepped in close to Aunt Bean and handed Ty his extra sweet coffee. He took a sip, winced, but to his credit, he kept drinking it. Would you like some coffee, Sawyer? Tessa Jane asked. I'd be happy to fix you a cup. That's okay, thank you. He hooked a thumb over his shoulder. I've got a thermos full around here somewhere. Ty cleared his throat. Is this a good time for you to look at the suggested changes to the restroom plans, Miss Verbena? Aunt Bean looked between me and Sawyer, then said, All right, but let's make it quick. I'll be right back, girls. Y'all carry on. I knew I should have made a run for it when I had the chance. A hazelnut scent wafted from Tessa Jane's cup as she took a sip of coffee, then said to Sawyer, How's Luna doing? Luna, oh my heart. The last time I'd seen her in person, she'd been wrapped like a burrito in a white knit blanket, sleeping peacefully. Her newborn cheeks had been rosy red, her tiny lips pursed, and she had a tiny pink bow clipped to her dark, fluffy hair. She'd be 12 in July. Good, great even, Sawyer said, rocking on the heels of his work boots. She's currently with my folks up in Mentone. Aunt Bean mentioned Annabelle had her baby. Tessa Jane said, Congratulations. Thanks. She's a tiny thing with big old lungs. Luna's in love, and I'm not sure how I'll convince her to come home without the baby until he pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, and showed us a picture of a young girl with curly dark hair and blue eyes peeking over the edge of a bassinet that held a tiny baby. She's beautiful, I forced myself to say, pretending that Aunt Bean hadn't been sending me pictures of Luna all these years. Every time I received one, I'd enlarge the photo to study her, to soak her in, to look for a resemblance to her mama, to simply get to know who she'd become. Tessa Jane smiled. Is she still on winter break? I listened to every word like they were cookies and I was starving. It had been a long time since I heard about Luna without it being filtered through Aunt Bean first. Technically, Sawyer said as he tucked his phone into his pocket. She started back last week, but she's able to do her work online. School's come a long way since we were kids. He held his damp ball cap in his hands. It looked like as soon as he'd taken it off, he'd run a hand through his gingery brown hair. It stuck out every which way, reminding me of long ago summers when we'd splash around in Sassafras Creek, which twined through the woods that bordered the Starlight Field. We'd spent a lot of time together as kids, as his family's farmhouse wasn't too far from ours. We went on adventures through the woods, played on his swing set and trampoline, caught lightning bugs. As we got older, we'd go for long hikes, taking lunch with us. We built a tree house in the woods. We read old comic books, played board games, found shapes in the clouds, wished on shooting stars. When I joined the theater program, so did he. When we met Ree, it felt natural to fold her into our friendship, and for a while it had been the three of us against the world, fighting tears, fighting longing for what used to be. I bit the inside of my cheek. I shifted my gaze to look out the front windows. Sure has, Tessa Jane said with a laugh. Did she get the part in the play? Play? What play? Yeah, she did, Sawyer said, smiling. My God, his smile had made my knees weak. Tessa Jane's eyes were filled with empathy as she said to me at Thanksgiving dinner, Luna was talking up a storm about trying out for a children's theater production of Alice in Wonderland. She was practicing her frog voice on us. I had no doubt she'd get the role. Best ribboning I'd ever heard. Thanksgiving, right. I bowed out the minute I knew Tessa Jane was going to be there. Another regret to add to the growing pile. If you're still in town in March, I know Luna would love for you to see the performance. Both of you, Sawyer added. Learning that Luna was a theater kid filled my heart to the tippy top. Reed would be beyond proud. She loved acting more than anything. Well, almost. Sawyer tucked his hat into his back pocket and added, but I suspect you'll see her far before then. Once she is back from Mentone, I'm afraid she's of a mind to camp out on Miss Verbina's doorstep. So if you open the door and see a tent, don't be alarmed. Tessa Jane laughed. The sound was light and sparkly. Why's that? She wants to talk to Addie. My heart dropped clear to the floor. I shifted my gaze to meet his, and it was easy to see his inner light shining in the hazel depths. She wants to know more about Ree. I swallowed hard, thinking of my best friend, of her quick laugh, her dark eyes, her devilish personality, her determination to be someone, do something, to get far away from Starlight, her secret perched on the tip of my tongue, ready to take flight, and the stabbing pain returned to my chest. I gripped my star pendant for dear life and eyed the front door. 4 long strides, maybe 5, and I could be out of here and free of the pain, at least temporarily. It always came back. Sawyer's gaze cut toward the hallway, then found its way back to me. Luna knows why you're here in Starlight, knows Miss Verbena is feeling poorly. And I told her you might not be in the mood to take a walk down memory lane, but she's stubborn and persistent. What she wants, she goes after until she gets it. In my head, I could hear Ree's determined voice saying, just watch me. My throat ached as I said, sounds a lot like her mama. He didn't agree or disagree, only said, I didn't want Luna to blindside you by showing up out of the blue. Don't feel obligated to talk with her. Just send her on home to me. He glanced toward the hallway again. I best be getting to work on that electric panel. He started walking off toward the back of the shop. Then he stopped, turned. It was real good seeing y'all again. With that, he was gone. I blew out of breath. I'd done it. I kept the secret, but I felt torn to pieces from keeping quiet. As soon as his footsteps faded, Tessa Jane asked, her voice low, you okay? I wasn't, not really. I gave a half-hearted shrug and walked over the window and looked out. The starlings I noticed were gone. I took a deep breath, then another, trying to calm the turmoil within me by focusing on the sense around me. I was amazed that after all its renovations, the bakery still held on to the scent of vanilla, and that after all this time, Sawyer still smelled of pine. So it seems like she likes Sawyer. So maybe the secret isn't bad to do with him. Hmm. Okay, guys, what's the rule on if you can have feelings or a relationship or anything like that with the person that your friend was with when they died? I think most people agree if the friend's alive and they used to have a relationship, that's a no, or you're picking that person over the friend, but it's a no for the friendship. But if the friend died, void, like, yeah, I guess you would need like a particular
okay from that person that if you because and the reason why I don't think your friend would give an okay before they died is because an assumption would have to be there that y'all had feelings while that she was alive for each other, which would be like, hey, I thought you were my friend, you know? So I don't think they would be like, oh, and it's okay if you guys are together because it's like, wait, what? I thought you were my friend. But then again, if the town is small enough, it's like, where are you gonna do? Later that night, I stood inside a room on the second floor of the big red barn, a space no bigger than a decent walk-in closet. It was packed with cleaning supplies and had a stained ceiling with a single low wattage light bulb that cast the room in spooky shadows. A thick wooden door, creaky floorboards, and a small window that was painted shut. It was going to take a lot of effort to make the room work as a recording studio, but it was doable. I began a mental checklist of things to be done, starting first with a full clean out since the shelving and supplies would cause unwanted echoes. I also needed to add acoustic tiles to the walls, a thick rug, and hang a heavy drape over the window. I pulled out my phone to start a shopping list when it rang, the ringtone, Too Good at Goodbyes, by Sam Smith, revealing exactly who was calling. My mama, Cecilia. Oh, she's still in touch with her mom. It was almost 11, and I sighed, debating whether to answer. She'd been calling multiple times a day since Friday evening. Well, why doesn't she show up? And I'd been ignoring each and every call because she didn't leave a voicemail. I knew it wasn't an emergency. Like the time I had to bail her out of jail when she was arrested for indecent exposure for bathing nude on what wasn't a nude beach. My mama, I'd come to discover as I aged, was a lot. She was loud, overdramatic, and often acted inappropriately for attention, even if it got her in legal trouble. Hand in hand with that, however, she could be extremely charming and flirtatious. I suspected that's what my father had been drawn to initially, but knew I was the reason he'd stayed. I'd been in my early 20s when my mama admitted to me that they'd only married because I was on the way. She told me how he begged her to say yes to his proposal, how he wore her down, how she felt trapped. When I asked if she'd meant trapped by marrying him or having me, she said it didn't matter much how, but it had explained a lot. She'd never really wanted to be a mother, but my daddy had always loved being a father. The phone kept singing, and I took a deep breath and answered, Hello? Finally, Mama exclaimed. You've been harder to catch than a greased up hog. I've been busy. I heard tell. Moving in again with Verbena. I didn't ask how she knew. It didn't matter. Feels like a step backward to me, she said, her voice sweet but sharp. You're 28 now, too old to be moving back home. I clenched my teeth. 29. I think I would know Addison. I breathed in for 5 counts. I knew better than to try and correct her, but in her mind, she was never wrong. Suddenly, feeling like I was suffocating in the small space, I stepped into the hallway, then strode into the large storage room at the rear of the barn. I scooted around the sacks of flour and headed straight to a large window that overlooked the backyard. Mm, 14. I do feel like if you get to a certain age, you forget how old people are. Like phone on speaker, so I could use both hands to shove the window upward, using more force than necessary. It's been a long day. Why are you calling, Mama? I asked, gulping in the cool breeze and wishing I hadn't answered her call. It had taken me years and a truckload of therapy to understand the emotional damage she had done to me as a child. She rarely visited. She didn't call on my birthday, let alone send a present. She hadn't even sent a card when I'd been hospitalized with appendicitis when I was 14. Yet I couldn't bring myself to fully cut her out of my life. Somewhere in me still was the little girl who never understood why her mama had left her behind. And I'd seen with my own eyes that she had some good in her, not a whole lot, but enough to give me hope that one day she'd change. You know why, Mama said. It wasn't possible not to notice the glow of the starlight aurora in the distance, dimmer than usual because it had been a cloudy day. Some of the scientists who visited at least once a year to study the phenomenon speculated the light was some sort of bioluminescent event, which sort of made sense since it seemed to be powered by sunlight. Others thought it had to do with mineral deposits left behind by the meteorite. No one knew for sure. However, everyone in Starlight was more than happy to believe it came from bits of broken star. No matter how cloudy the day, at night the land still glowed weakly, offering a hint of what could be. A gas stove burner on low versus high. Even faint, the light was take your breath away lovely, and finding clarity, certainty was still possible. While I wasn't necessarily a fan of the gifts the starlight offered, I'd always been able to appreciate its stunning beauty. Ribbons of blue, silver, green, and gold light swayed in the darkness, as it always did. The sight brought tears to my eyes and made my chest expand with an emotion that was hard to identify. There was just something so powerful about the light, a reminder, really, that there was still so much about this world that was mysteriously beautiful. I think that we like looking at the stars, like the moon, the sunset, the sunrise, things like that. Because if you go back to all of our ancestry, what's the one thing that they had in common? It wasn't like cable TV. It was going to be like every one of your ancestors looked at the stars, the sunset, the sunrise. Like there probably is something magical to it in our DNA. Like you don't know why for sure we're like fascinated or it brings up thoughts or some feeling in us that comes from before. Well, I wasn't necessarily a fan of the gift the starlight offered. I'd always been able to appreciate its stunning beauty. I think I already got that. Are you wondering about Aunt Bean's health? I asked, knowing full well that wasn't why she called. She rarely asked about Bean. Heck, she rarely asked about me. because we don't know much at this point of her health. She called only when she wanted something from me, usually money, or like today, a renewal of my promise to always pretend I was an only child, using me to nurture her hatred in her absence. Her voice was calm, even, but it was coated in ice. I hear she's there too. By she meant Tessa Jane. Mama never said her name, not hers or Henrietta's, whom she only called that woman. By all accounts, my parents had never had a happy marriage. According to Aunt Bean, they tried their hardest to make it work in deference to me and had sheltered me from the worst of it. Knowing what I knew now, it was likely my daddy who'd done the sheltering. I was beyond glad I didn't remember the separations, the arguments. My earliest memory had been when my mama left. You know how I feel about her, Mama said, still talking about Tessa Jane. I did know, because she had always told me that if I loved her, I had to feel the same. I studied the shimmery starlight, captivated and oddly comforted by its familiarity. Soon, though, my gaze drifted to the small cabin near the edge of the woods. Lights glowed in the windows, and I couldn't help picturing Sawyer's face, those hazel eyes. My attention was drawn away from the cabin by the sound of quacking. I shifted a bit to get a better view of the farmhouse's backyard. In the shine of a floodlight, I saw Tessa Jane running around, chasing after the ducks, trying to herd them into the shed that was their temporary home. They were outwitting her at every turn. I smiled at the antics. You know what I expect of you, Mama said. I knew. But I wasn't a little girl anymore who believed her mother's empty promises. Back then, I didn't really think I had a choice in the matter. Not if I wanted her back. Now I knew better. Now I knew she never should have asked such a thing of me in the first place. Outside, the ducks kept quacking. In the light, I could see Tessa Jane's smile and could hear the humorous, cajoling tone she was using to convince them to go to bed. I have to go now, Mama, I said abruptly, but bye. I hung up, quickly closed the window, and hurried next door to help my sister rustle up some ducks. Chapter 5. Cold ingredients will make cake batter dense and lumpy and prone to curdling. Ain't nobody wants that. Letting the ingredients come to room temperature will ensure a smooth mixture with lots of air bubbles that will expand in the oven, making the sponges nice and fluffy with an even texture, just like cakes. Time can also work wonders for warming up to people who might have once been a little cold. Tessa Jane. On Tuesday afternoon, the big red barn's kitchen was buzzing as all three of the sugar birds flitted about the space I was set up at the frosting station. The knuckles on my right hand were starting to ache from gripping the electric hand mixer, or whizzer, as Aunt Bean liked to call it. Stella, take off slowly your heels. You know what? Just because you asked so nicely and said please, and because you phrased it in perfect English, I will do so.
Okay.
There you go. Slowly removed. You're welcome. On Tuesday afternoon, the Big Red Barn's kitchen was buzzing as all three of the sugar birds flitted about the space. I was set up at the frosting station, and the knuckles on my right hand were starting to ache from gripping the electric hand mixer, or whizzer, as Aunt Bean liked to call it. Using a stand mixer for this task, like the sugar birds did, made much more sense, truly because Bean preferred to make frosting this way. Exactly like her mama had taught her. I did too. There's magic to be found in tradition, she used to tell me when I asked why she didn't make the switch. I liked being part of that tradition, very much so. When she left an hour ago for a doctor's appointment, choosing Addie to drive her, she said to me, "It's a great day for you to get caught up with the sugar birds, Peanut. You'll be in good hands with them as you settle in here." Settle? It sounded so appealing, being with the sugar birds, where there was, yes, that's what's called malicious compliance. Mm, was a sense of friendship, coziness, and sweetness. Made me want to stay, made me want to make another attempt at baking the shop's trademark cakes, even though I'd given up trying a long time ago, failing time and time again. As a Bee Gees record played on a turntable in the corner, Willa Joe Digby peeked over my shoulder. She was a tall, broad woman who had a thick brown braid laced with silver strands, kind of grayish brown eyes, and a deep longing to visit her grandchildren in California, who she saw only once a year because travel costs were simply too expensive. The need to see them pulsed off her, rattling the bangle bracelets on her wrists, sad silvery jangles. I wished I could make a donation to her travel fund, but any extra money I had at the end of every month was donated to my mother's secret society. Many around here would be quite shocked to see the bottom line of my bank account. The most shocked would probably be my granddaddy. Every month he gave Mama and me generous stipends, using money from the trust account he'd inherited from my grandmother, although he made it clear he didn't like sharing the money. He was dutifully following Gigi's wishes. She'd been giving Mama and me an allowance for as long as I could remember and requested the practice continue after her death. I was honestly surprised he was complying. Though I shouldn't be, not with the way he wanted my and Annie's land. He knew he had to stay on my good side. Absolutely beautiful, Willa Jo said, still peeking in my bowl. She was one of three sugar birds named for their sweet natures and incessant chatter, chirping and squawking. Friends since grade school, they were now in their mid 60s and had worked in the bakery for what felt like forever. Individually, and especially as a whole, they were the most hardworking, salt of the earth people I'd ever met in my life, and truly felt like family. Thanks, Willa Joe, I said. She was talking about the bowl of ermine frosting I was whipping up, made with a cooked milk and flour base. It was an old-fashioned frosting, light and fluffy, that had the texture of whipped cream. It was less sweet than a classic buttercream, and Bean used it, or a variation of it, for a few of her cakes, like her luminous lemon cake and red velvet delight. Willa Joe leaned a hip against the work table. Not that I expected anything less, considering that fancy degree of yours, though her husky voice was pleasant, cheerful even. I heard an undercurrent of concern. It was as if she worried that while I was here helping out, I'd swap out Bean's humble cakes for pettifers or milfeule, or use a Swiss meringue buttercream instead of the ermine. The sugar birds needn't worry. Nothing was going to change as the scent of Aunt Bean's vanilla extract swirled in the beaters for a whisk attachment. Willa Joe still loomed, and trying to put her mind at ease, I said, I've had no better teachers than y'all. A chorus of ahs drifted through the room. Then Willa Joe added, we're real glad you finally found your way back here, honey, right where you've always belonged. Just like that, my shadow darkened. I pasted on a fake smile. It's like old times. After all, this humble barn kitchen was where I learned to bake. You took your sweet time getting here, Pinky Doucette, another of the sugar birds, said on a laugh. We expected you years ago. Something that felt like grief welled up in me, and I forcefully tamped it back down. Hush now, Delilah said. Clearly, Tessa Jane gets her time management skills from her auntie. Delilah and Bean like to say they'd been friends since the womb. Their mamas had been pregnant at the same time. Delilah was a tiny but solid workhorse of a woman, always moving, always going, always pushing forward. She'd been married for 36 years, had raised 3 boys, and tragically buried one of them, and now had 6 grandchildren, keeping her busy when she wasn't working full time. Oh, thank you, Jerry. What is that? Bending on a knee and sending love or roses, flowers. Thank you. Mm. Again, I forced a smile and turned the whizzer back on. It was true, Aunt Bean's inner clock tended to run a bit behind, but the reason I hadn't shown up here years ago looking to become a sugar bird had nothing to do with timing and everything to do with pain. It hadn't always been that way. Once, a long time ago, I dreamed about working alongside Bean and the sugar birds and making the cakes. Oh, the delightful cakes. Eventually, however, Granddaddy had robbed me of that dream after he'd become fixated on me mastering Aunt Bean's recipes. Every day after school, I'd bake a cake for him, and every day I failed to replicate Aunt Bean's magic. It was all too easy to recall him saying, "It's not good enough," before throwing a cake I'd made into the trash. Aunt Bean had always said that it took only following her recipes for the magic to happen. But no matter how hard I tried, I simply could not infuse my bright side into a cake. Not back then, not now. At the reminder, it took everything in me not to flee the barn, to escape the vanilla wrapped reminders that I'd never measure up to what was expected of me from either side of the family. As I worked the frosting, I thought about the summons I had received this morning, the hand delivered at first light by my granddaddy's assistant, Jenna Elkins. He was throwing a black tie party at his home on Friday night, and I was expected to be there. I'd known I couldn't avoid him forever, but I'd been hoping for a longer reprieve. I wished I could ask Aunt Bean or even Addie to come along, someone to act as a buffer, but there was no need for them to be miserable too. As music filled the air, my thoughts stayed with Addie. Some things had changed between us yesterday at the bakery. Shifted? Began? I wasn't sure. I was still wary of letting her in, afraid of being hurt yet again. Still, I had to admit, it had been it had been nice. For a moment there, the two of us feeling like a team, feeling like we had each other's backs, feeling like sisters. Pinky wandered over, sidling up to my workstation. After the briefest pause, she said, "We were real sorry about what happened with Carson, Tessa Jane. The way we see it, he's dumber than a box of rocks." Why was that person hidden? Can you tell me while I'm here? I didn't see what they said, so can you tell me? Oh, wait. Pinky's voice was light and breathy, making her outrage toward Carson sound more like indignation. She fully embraced her name by wearing all pink and even dyed her angled bob a shade of fuchsia. "Dumber than dirt," Delilah exclaimed. Willett Joe crossed her arms. "He's so dumb he could throw himself at the ground and miss." Honestly, I'd expected the Sugarbirds to say something about my disastrous wedding as soon as I walked in the door 2 hours ago. The restraint was impressive. You're not going to tell me why they were hidden? You're really not? For like, why?
Ouch. I just feel like it's the least you could do. Like, if I'm here reading and you hide someone is to tell me why. Like, that's the literal least you could do. Like, just asking. Anyway, I guess I should stop since I'm not getting an answer. So do I have to like literally call you up to ask? Like, that's ridiculous. I have to pee. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. Congratulations to your team, Arthur. Huh. Rob wrote me that he got it was a text he got during the show. But congratulations. Um, oh, thank you. I asked you why you blocked that person. That's all I asked. You blocked them. I immediately asked you why. He was making rude comments. I saw you blocked a comment that it was like 10 hearts. Was it that? Marry me, marry me. I don't think that's rude. A bunch of smiley faces with heart eyes. You are amazing. I'm not seeing which one. Before? Okay, well, whatever. I'm not gonna fight with you. Well, I appreciate everyone that was here, even if you got blocked. Sorry, I had no control. Um, I love you. Um, I guess we're getting closer to her revealing her secret. Learning more about the town. Um, and just overall setting the scene of them in the kitchen, girls cooking together, talking. Um, Tomorrow, I think I'm gonna go to the dump. I hope it's not rain tomorrow because I don't like to drive on the freeway in the rain, but I want to have stuff I want to get rid of. Oh, thanks, John. It looks like it's a peach because it has a leaf. Oh, there's super chat. What else? Um, so dump tomorrow. And tomorrow's Tuesday, so plenty more reading. I am trying to keep my head up. I Part of it has been trying to sleep because when my brain is active, it finds things that are upsetting and like I don't like doing that. Maybe I should just watch more Night Agent and try to just like, focus on that to the extent that I can. Um to not go to or be reminded of sad places. But I hope that's some of an explanation of why I was sad yesterday. Um, and The fight continues. Get some rest. Stay warm. I'm gonna feed the puppies. John sent them some cans. I can join you. Yeah, you want to watch more Night Agent? Let's see what episode I'm on. I think I'm on 4, or I finished 4 of C. Sleep well.